your hand makes me tremble within. The smell of your hair.
Man, feeling well, man.
What's your name?
My name is Cardi Cornish.
And you a legend?
I'm a legend.
You're a legend here in Baltimore City. Where we at right now?
We live in the 17, Pennsylvania Avenue. The legendary Pennsylvania Avenue.
Man, the last time I saw you here, you were doing something just across the street here. What were you doing?
Oh yeah, I had some food left over from an event. We brung it out and fed a couple of people, man.
Why you do that?
Nice soul food.
Why you do that?
Man, the love that God has shown me in Christ, man, it overflows. That's how it overflows.
That's right.
We got more than we can use.
Already was high within San Antonio, Winchester community, but the age group is getting younger. Children under the age of 18 being murdered in San Antonio has a high peak right now. So our goal is to catch the children.
You're going hard, man. You're going hard on that man today.
So what do you think, Mr. Mayor? You got manufacturing right here, helping our young people despite all of the challenges in the city of Baltimore, right here on North Avenue.
No, it's really about the growth. Just knowing where, being there when they were down in Port Covington and seeing how far it's grown. Like you said earlier, like getting the sorbet, you know, where we got the sorbet at the beginning, but now being able to, when I'm at Cannon Yards, get it, or anytime I'm down at Harbor Place to get it, and folks to not even know, but they gonna know now that like this is coming from young people in West Baltimore, right there in West Baltimore on North Avenue, where they think nothing great comes from, but they can see it in what the young people do.
It's the things that you do.
Here on the Pike, Mississippi, now right here, French Lord Mathis. A beautiful town, just leaving Algiers, which is update 10 years since Katrina. The news.
It's a smile on your face. And as time goes by, I know I'm in a better place. I'm in a better place.
All right, y'all, this is what I came to New York for. Besides the Black Wall Street Awards, we're going in here and get some of this real good jerk chicken. Johnny Glover, out.
Your skin, just the touch of your hand makes me tremble within.
But we need to feed our loved ones. DOTS needs to rescind this package policy program so that our loved ones are able to eat every day in that filthy facility that
we have some stars in the building.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, entered to win it for the long haul, baby. As you well know, folks, we have a huge event tomorrow, 30 years of journalists. It's been 30 years. Wow. So we're going to have the Joe Mann's Black Wall Street Awards at the ceremony tomorrow, Coppin State, 6 p.m. Don't be late. We have some food, a little bit of food. We'll be like Jesus, a little bit of bread and some fish. We're going to feed the masses. But more than that, we're going to feed your spirit. And the awards will include this young man here, Karanji Gacucu. How did I do? Karanji Gacucu. Did I say it right?
Did pretty good there. Thank you.
Okay. Now, how do I say, first of all, how do you say good morning?
In Swahili, habari gani is the most common.
Okay, habari gani Karanji Gacucu.
Mzuri sana, asante sana. That means I'm good and thank you very much.
All right, so we learned some Swahili today. You were born in, so is King, you considered, got my globe over here, East Africa. Not Central Africa, East Africa.
East Africa, yes. We are right on the east coast of Africa.
And so you're surrounded by Tanzania's near you, Ethiopia's near you?
Ethiopia to the north, because Ethiopia is where what is called the Horn of Africa begins. So Ethiopia is directly to the north. To the northwest is Sudan. To the northeast is Somalia, which also shares, which also has access to the coast. And then to the south is Tanzania, and to the west, which is landlocked, is Uganda.
So I've been to Ethiopia and I've been to Tanzania.
Never to Kenya?
Not yet.
I'm getting out of here. Come on.
So Karanja, where are you now? What country are you in now?
So at this very moment, I'm in the United States, very close to you. I'm actually in DC today, all week, but I split my time between Baltimore City and New York City and Nairobi.
Okay, are you coming to the awards tomorrow in Baltimore?
Of course I'm gonna be there. There's nowhere else to be.
That's good stuff. You are a writer, you are a publisher, an editor. Tell us about your professional station in life.
Correct. So I published the BriefScoop, the BriefScoop.com, which is a news platform that is looking at issues of interest to the whole Pan-African world. Everywhere where Africans are, whether it's on the African continent, in the United States, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, whether it's in India, the Pacific, in Australia, no matter where we are everywhere, right? And our issues are very unique to us. And so we are covering the world from our perspective, from the African global perspective, because we have those very specific interests everywhere we are. And that is something that I had always wanted to do. And I don't know how far you want me to go into the story, but that's where I am now. But the story begins when I'm in Kenya as a kid, because one of the things that I became aware of from very early on was, even though, when you're a kid, your world revolves around your neighborhood where you live. But my cousins lived in the United States. And one of the things that I became aware of very early is that the stuff that came from the United States, the clothes, the things that they came with and either bought for us or gave us, were of better quality. And that was always interesting to me. I remember thinking, why is that? But not just the fact that those things were of better quality, they were also cheaper. So I used to save up my little Kenya shillings, and I would send money to my cousin and ask her to send me stuff. And one of the things that, this is not what an average kid is usually thinking about, but I remember thinking, why is it that when I'm sending her money, the currency rate, it changes? The dollar was always a dollar, but the Kenya shilling kept fluctuating. And I remember thinking, who decides that? Why? What's the justification? I also remember thinking, why am I sending money all the way to this far off place? I know that it's got to cost a lot of money to travel from that place to Kenya. So I remember thinking, why do I have to send money? And why is it still cheaper even after me sending the money there, even after the transportation? There was something there that made me think there's something that's not right. And so I had questions about currency exchange rates, who decides them and why, and how they determined. I had questions about why I would spend less to get better quality. And I had questions about who decides all of that. And I wanted to investigate because there was something about that didn't sit right with me. There was something about that told me that there was an imbalance that needs to be addressed. And to me, there was a suspicion that imbalance was man-made, that it wasn't existential, It wasn't. So anyway, so my interest in exploring, in research, in exploring the world started very young, but I think as I started to find what I felt were answers to my questions, there was also an interest not to just research and understand it for myself, but also to share that information, to engage others, to inform, to set the record straight. The other thing that I grew up with from very, very young is I grew up in a very traditional African setting because I grew up on my ancestral land. So we lived on my grandparents' home, on our grandparents' homestead. So what traditionally happens is that the men, the young men, when they grow up and they start their own families, they just build a house next to their fathers. And so you end up building a whole entire village. Traditionally, that's what would happen. It would be homesteads and they would keep increasing because the men never move away. You always just got a piece of land right next to your dad's. And so I grew up in that setting. And so my grandmother was my neighbor, and I would go to her house and listen to her stories. And she would tell me all these stories about the Mau Mau and the war for independence and how brave the Mau Mau were and how confident they were and how much smarter they were than the British and how they outwitted the British despite having very rudimentary weapons that they had just learned how to make. The guns were new to us, and all they had was what they could take from the Brits, and then they replicated them by making homemade guns, by the way. This is not something that's often spoke about or even taught, but that really is kind of a big deal when I think about it. Like, they had these homemade weapons, and that's what they were fighting, these homemade guns. And they would have, I wish I had one in here, because I don't know the English word for it. I think I do. Like a door bolt. They would use door bolts as triggers. I've actually seen one of those guns, and they're still available. Like, you can still see them in museums in Kenya. But so these stories about the bravery, the resilience, the ability to overcome, the ingenuity, the fact that they figured this out, right? They figured this out, making these weapons on the move during the war. And so I also grew up with that sense and understanding that there was such a thing as an injustice, and that injustice had been meted out on us by somebody called the colonizer. And I knew that the colonizer was this foreigner, this European. And so even before the currency question, I already had been primed to understand that there was such a thing as colonialism. It was bad. Our people had fought against it, and according to my grandmother, they had vanquished, they had won, they had gained victory. But as I was learning about these currency questions, these issues with currencies, there were questions coming up in my mind about, well, had they completed, was that victory fully baked in? Because these inequalities, these inequities, this imbalance that I was witnessing in real time, it didn't seem to make sense. What became clear to me was that there was an inequity in the way my life was in Kenya versus the way my cousin's life was in the United States. Now, my cousin is just like me. Is just another Kenyan young, he was a Kenyan kid. His soul rest in peace. He actually died recently last year. That was my baby cousin right here in Baltimore. But I remember becoming aware that these people, my relatives, who, if they lived in Kenya, would have a very different life, somehow when they lived in the United States had an extremely different life. The other thing, and I'll wrap up with this so you can ask another question, is when my cousin visited with his family, when I was about 10 or 12. I think I was 12. And he was telling me about the United States, and it was very fascinating. And he taught me about the G.I. Joes and, all the toys he played with. And it was all very fascinating and interesting and exciting. And I wanted to come see it for myself. And we agreed, we made a pact that we would go to college together in the United States when we finished college. And we agreed we would start saving up our pennies so that, when time to go to college came around, we would pay our own way. I started saving my pennies. And by the time I was graduating high school, the rude reality, the rude awakening dawned on me that my little Kenyan shillings were of no use, were of no value. I remember becoming aware of what my mother's salary, or I think what I estimated to be her salary. I don't think your parents ever let you know what their salary is. But what I estimated to be her teacher's salary, even for a year, was not even sufficient, I don't think, if I remember right, to pay. It was, a few $100s, if I remember right correctly. Or at least in my mathematics, I might have been completely wrong. But it would not have been sufficient to even pay for a semester of college. So there was a question in my mind, well, what's the difference with my mother being a teacher in Kenya, but a teacher in the United States can afford to be able to send their kid to college? So those inequities, they stood stark and clear in my mind. I wanted to investigate. And so when I set out to go to school overseas, I wanted to find the answers to those questions. And so I, when I did my sociology degree, my thesis was on third world debt. It was the first thing I investigated. And the results of that, what I found out in that, made me want to find out even more and to inform even more. Because one of the things that I found out, the result, I think the one main nugget that I found was that for every $1 single so-called given in so-called aid to the so-called third world, $11 comes back to the so-called first world. So the flow of capital is not from the northern hemisphere. It's not from the global north to the global south. In fact, the flow of capital, and we are referring just to aid. We're not even talking about natural resources. We're not talking about the free labor that is still being consumed all across Africa by, Western companies. We're just talking about aid. We're not talking about the goods that they buy for pennies on the dollar, the coffee, the tea, the bauxite, all the minerals, the copper, the uranium. We're not even talking about all of those, because if you were to include that, it's trillions of dollars. But if you just talk about aid, for every single dollar so-called given, which is a lie, there's no such thing as aid, there's only loans, Sherlockian loans, $11 comes back. So that there started a fire burning. The world needed to understand this. So that's the journey that led to the BriefScoop, because, and there was a detour, because I worked in many other jobs before starting the BriefScoop about maybe 8 years ago, in 2014, I believe. I worked on Wall Street first, but that journey began when I was a kid, because I always wanted to do this research. And once I started to understand more, I wanted to share it with the world. I wanted to inform.
How old are you now?
I'm 51, actually.
And so you first came to the U.S. how long ago?
I came to the U.S. in 1999 when I had just turned 20, or just before my 27th birthday. So I've been here, wait a minute, not 30 years, 24 years.
So it took you, so you graduated high school is the same age, 18 or so?
Yes, I graduated high school at 17. When I was 18, I left Kenya and moved, a few weeks after graduating high school, I left Kenya and moved to the United Kingdom because, that was another thing that I found out. It was like coming to the United States or leaving Kenya and going to the West was like getting a ticket to enter heaven. And so there was that detour. At the time, you didn't, as a Kenyan, as a Commonwealth citizen, you didn't require a visa to go to the United Kingdom. So I got a passport, jumped on a plane, moved to England. But the goal was always still to come to the United States for school and to join my cousin.
Had anyone in your family moved to England before?
So my dad had been educated in England, and he had come back. But no, at the time, no one was living in England when I moved there.
Did your dad impress it upon you growing up that you two had to go to England, or you two had to go to the U.S.?
On the contrary, my dad discouraged it. He always discouraged us from even wanting to go overseas. He said it wasn't, he didn't want us to go. He didn't have a good experience in England. My dad studied in England probably, I don't know the exact year, but it might have been in the late 50s, 58, 59, thereabouts. He was born in 1935. So in 1959, he would have been about 24, 25, thereabouts. So he did not have good experiences in England. You can imagine what it would have been like at the time. Even worse, the level of racism would have been far worse than it is now. And so he did not enjoy his time there. He also fell ill while he was there. So that was not something that he encouraged us or wanted us to do at all.
So Kenya has about 54 million people.
Correct.
And let me just reframe this conversation. I think one thing that I should mention is that I guess a couple of weeks ago now, I was in the vicinity of the Baltimore Times, and I wanted to check in on Dina Wan. And she's been a long-time colleague, long-time supporter. And I should meet this young man. So I'm in Joy's office, Joy Bramble's office, and I meet, at the time, the gentleman who was to be the new publisher of the Baltimore Times, Karanji Gacucu. And then it wasn't much longer after that we come to understand that he will not be the publisher, and he will continue to run BriefScoop. And let me say this, running BmoreNews.com and now this streaming platform, blackusa.news, it is always a pleasure to meet a fellow writer, male, female, but it's been particularly meaningful to meet Mr. Gacucu because it gives us both a chance to dialogue on some matters that are serious to both of us. Interestingly, I'm heavily interested. I know that on Be More News, we don't cover as much international, and Mr. Gacucu is more of an expert, if you ask me, having lived both in Kenya and in the UK and now US. And me, on the other hand, I may have a little more experience from a US perspective. And so we'd like to welcome you to this blended conversation on the diaspora from East Baltimore to East Africa. And this is going to be very special. Another thing I want to frame, so I just wanted to acknowledge how we met and how, while you did not become the publisher of the Baltimore Times, I think it's even more profound that you are still the publisher of the BriefScoop. I think it's more important to identify that you're still pushing BriefScoop.com, which has been a lifelong mission going back to when you were a child and you were trying to understand the currency rate, the exchange rate, and possibly why your dad felt the way he did, the experiences he had in England, and I guess now how that did not deter you because you wanted to go see for yourself. And there's one other most important thing. especially as we're having this diasporic conversation. Is that a word, diasporic?
I guess we can make it a word, diaspora.
I mean, English is a bastard language anyway. But when I think of, and this is very important. This is very, very important, because a part of the undertone of this conversation is dispelling the myths that have kept people in the diaspora separated from each other. I think Bob Marley say, "I and I, nothing they can do can separate I and I from the love of our Father. They say love is thicker than a water." Anyway, I've been up late working on this whole event tomorrow, but what's meaningful, and I want people to hear this because we have a lot of people joining us from various places. While Black people in America were going through, particularly the civil rights era, 50s, 60s in particular, the continent of Africa was going through a similar battle with a similar enemy, and quite often the same enemy. The West, UK, US. Anytime the US go to war, the UK is right there. So the independence movement in Africa, I think was Ghana the first country to get its independence?
Ghana was the first country, yes.
But it set off a series of motions in the United States, the civil rights. So there was violence. People were tired here in the United States of the Ku Klux Klan, of what was his name? Bill Wallace, Bob Wallace. No, I'm going to say Bob Wallace. Wallace down in Birmingham, Alabama. It was Bull Connor, the racist cops.
Tom, Dick, Harry.
Yeah, doesn't really matter. Georgia, the civil rights workers who were killed in Mississippi, the lynchings, still the intermittent lynchings. But at the same time, Africa, the various countries across Africa were dealing with kicking out the colonialists. 53 of the 54 countries in Africa have been colonized, all but Ethiopia, and it wasn't like Ethiopia went unscathed.
Ethiopia and Liberia.
Ethiopia and Liberia, not Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone was conquered by the British. But to your point,
about Liberia, thank you.
Yeah, to your point, neither Liberia nor Ethiopia went unscathed. The claws of colonialism still are very much in those two countries, even today.
And so when I think of Kwame Nkrumah, the president of Ghana at the time, and his partnership with a W.E.B. Du Bois, who is quite possibly my favorite intellectual. I try to keep his book nearby, Souls of Black Folk. I think of some of the best and brightest minds from the African diaspora. I know that we are merely carrying forth a long-term conversation. There he is.
My favorite shirt.
Yeah.
I've worn this shirt so much, it's worn out. I need to get another one.
Why do you like Du Bois?
Du Bois coming together with Nkrumah bore Pan-Africanism, which is the spirit of the BriefScoop. And so the journey for the BriefScoop begins even before I'm born, right? Because without Du Bois and Nkrumah and their partnership, there is no Pan-Africanism.
Do you think those two, their partnership, demonstrated the guts, the intellectual guts? Yes, we know we can fight. We know we can pick up a gun, a pitchfork, a knife, an ice pick, or whatever. We know we can do that. But what do you think of that intellectual camaraderie to combat the very same enemy?
Well, it demonstrates an understanding of the commonality of not just the enemy, but of the solution. The solution is in unity. The only solution is in unity. The only solution is we don't have the guns, right? Just like the Mau Mau. We don't have the modern weaponry. We don't have the financial, they own the financial, monetary system, or used to own, that's changing. There's the blockchain that is changing, but still very slowly, because even that they're trying to own. But they understood that we have the numbers, and that with our numbers brought together, we can organize. And the only difference between us and the enemy, which is the enemy of progress, is our ability to organize. And so there needs to be that intellectual coming together that changes that dynamic, that changes the paradigm.
One of the things I remember from our first lengthy conversation was how you sought to understand the trajectory of the African American in America.
Not so much the trajectory. I guess what I hadn't understood,
the nuances.
The nuances. What I hadn't understood is that I suppose you're right. The trajectory, in that before coming to the United States, I thought that it was a different trajectory based on what I read in Ebony, Jet, Essence, Right On, all of those news magazines, the Cosby Show, when it was still a thing, even Different Strokes.
Did
right?
you say Right On? You talking about Right On magazine?
Right On magazine. You remember
Damn,
that?
man, I haven't thought about that in 30 years. Right On magazine. Wow, you were doing some research. Right On, man. We used to get the pinups and everything. Put it on your wall.
I had them on my wall. I had Big Daddy Kane. What was his name? There was somebody, I forget who it was. LL Cool J, of course. I had Public Enemy, of course. Yeah, I had the pullouts. Whitney Houston. My sister had Prince and MJ. Yeah. So that was the image that you get, right? That at the signing of the Civil Rights Bill, racism ended. Black people were free. They were living the life of ebony, because these are they're beautiful representations of our people, and they represent a segment of our people, but it is only a segment, right? The representations that you find in Ebony and Essence are of a very upper middle class and upper middle class sort of existence or Black reality. And so it
speaks to the power of the media. And you now, so you now understand, after some time, you understand that that's middle class America at best.
At best.
I guess you came to understand that there was a whole other side to the story.
Well, they don't show you that. Where do you see it? You don't see it.
The mass incarceration, in the 40s and the 50s, the Black community was more married than probably any other community in America. But now we're talking about 70% single mother households. We're talking about mass incarceration rate where African Americans comprise 15% of the population, yet Black men make up 38.8% of the prisons, and Black women are the fastest growing demographic. This small, and I don't like the word minority. I hate the word. I despise it. But a minority is the majority in prison.
Absolutely. And by the way, even those numbers still get skewed, because to listen to white social media, the Twitterverse especially, you would believe that it's 60% of black men, make 60% of the prison population is black men. It's actually only 38. So thank you for that number. And by the way, despite that high rate of single parent households, black men are still more likely to be in the lives of their children than any other race in the United States. And so it is necessary to always set the record straight, right? This is the reason, the raison d'etre for BMO News, for Black News, for Black USA News, right? And for the BriefScoop. To set the record straight, to constantly set the record straight, because it needs to be constantly repeated and repeatedly said.
Just like Fox TV, they loop that stuff. They loop lies and rhetoric and these ugly images over and over and over. And let me just say, the one great thing that no one can take away from an Obama administration is the imagery of a nuclear family, father, mother, children. One picture for 8 years straight, uninterrupted.
And it was uniquely black because the grandmother was there too.
Oh yeah, she's straight out what? Southside somewhere, God rest her soul.
Right. And so they brought that element to show the difference with us, because we bring our extended family, and that is part of the strength, and that is why.
Let me go there. Obama's family was Kenyan.
Correct. His father is Kenyan. All his siblings are Kenyan except Maya.
So my understanding is the one thing Obama tried to take to Kenya was the whole LGBTQ equity movement, and my understanding is they told him to take it and leave.
Yeah, they told him where to shove it.
And that's important also for us to understand, because despite America's angle on things, because that's what America is, a master of imagery, a master of media. And so the reason this conversation is necessary is so that we can debrief ourselves over what we think, as opposed to what has been heaped upon us, even through Christianity, the church, religion, other dogma, that we are expected to embrace and digest. Where we have just noted a clear example where it was regurgitated back and kicked out and dismissed. No, do not do that here. Because, okay, please.
Yeah, precisely. Because, and the question, the issue in Kenya was, why are you bringing an issue to us that's not even an issue? Because we don't share the same issues as the United States. We don't have the culture wars in Kenya. Don't bring us the culture wars. They're not our fight. That's your fight. You go have it over there. Because there's no oppression of any minority in Kenya. There's no oppression of sexual minorities. It just wasn't a thing, and it still isn't a thing. It's a Western import. This whole social, cultural, culture wars, the abortion, gay rights, all of that is an import. It's a religious import.
So one of the things that I have paid attention to from my perch here in Baltimore is Planned Parenthood. Now, I got to tell you, unless you really know the history of Planned Parenthood, of eugenics, of its founder, Margaret Sanger, of her sentiments about Black people, she said that we were weeds that needed to be exterminated. If we don't understand that she was a mentee of Charles Galton, who was the cousin of Charles Darwin, if we don't understand the history of eugenics and the things that have been heaped upon us, even to the extent of the Eurocentric attempt to build a quote-unquote master race. If we don't understand that the United States and this eugenics movement impacted, influenced Adolf Hitler, if we don't understand the history, the international, the global history of how a Planned Parenthood came about, such that today Planned Parenthood clinics are heavily in the Black community, then we can never understand why Planned Parenthood targets Africa today.
Precisely. There is no population problem in Africa. There is no population problem in the Black community in the United States either. The only problem with population, the Black population in the United States, exists in the minds of those who do not want to see that population grow. And so, and to the point that I made earlier about the Obama family with the grandmother in the family, Black people, we do look after our children, whether it's with extended family or what have you. And so this just isn't a crisis, a population crisis, not in the United States, in the Black community, not in Africa. We need.
We're talking with Karanji Gacucu, and we've obviously hit the nail on the head globally. We've hit the nail on the head. For me, anytime they go cutting my guests off, I know that we are hitting the nail on the head. This is the truth. This is what I live for, where we uncover the truth. The global fight against those who would take Black labor and want it for free and actually think that they own another human being. The audacity of someone in the 20th, 21st century, or going back to the 14th and 15th century, to think they can kidnap, steal, buy an entire group of people, transport them to other countries around the world, and not just the United States, to Brazil. Brazil has the largest population of Black people outside of Africa. 100 million Black people in Brazil. And shout out to their longtime hero who was captured, decapitated, Zumbi. We have Harriet Tubman here in the U.S., even the white guy, John Brown. We've had freedom fighters from Nat Turner to Denmark VC to Chief John Horse. But there were other heroes. There was King Bayano. And you can read more about that in my second book, King Bayano, King Miguel. There were Black people fighting in Venezuela, in Jamaica, of course, Haiti. Haiti had the strongest Black people in the Western Hemisphere, the Haitians. And that's why you will never hear anything good about Haiti in your lifetime. That's why Haiti is still paying restitution to France, the Francais. So when I see on social media that there's something horrible that's happened in France, and people will start changing their profile picture, oh, I stand with France. Shut up. Do your damn homework. These people got their foot on your brother's neck, and your brother's starving because of it. Your brother's starving. The devil is a liar. We know what it is. We hit the nail on the head, and the people's got a target on us, and we know it. But we okay with it. Because let me tell you, we still got our spear, man. You know what this is?
Oh, you got is that a sword? A spear. Holy freaking moly. Where did you get that?
Tanzania, man. A little rusty. I need to put some oil on it.
Wow, I see that. Well,
They see that's how you become a man. You must kill a lion.
absolutely, and that's from my community, the Maasai community. I'm part Kikuyu and part Maasai.
That's Maasai.
Absolutely.
Hey, matter of fact, I need me a blue Maasai blanket. I don't have a blue one. I sent my cat Michael Haney. He's probably watching this show. He promised me a blue Maasai. We gonna talk. I need to get me my blanket. I got a red one. I got a red one upstairs, but I need a blue one. Okay.
Everybody
anyway,
got a red one. I don't have a blue one either. Actually, come to think of it, I have a number of. Oh, I might have a blue one. I might have one for you.
Okay, but we were talking about. Come on, you remember where we were? Because I done just went off. I'm over here talking about Haiti, and Haiti's still paying restitution. The need for Pan-African unity, and how we must dispel the lies, the mistruths, and the division. Man, you talk about what your perception of the U.S. was about the Huxtables and, rap music. But then there's also our perception of Africa. That black people think, I mean, we have some of the most ignorant perceptions of Africa. But I will just start with this white guy swinging through the jungle on a vine. Because I'd have sent a couple of chimpanzees on him with some blow darts to knock him right on out. And we're like, y'all ain't gonna see him no more. You ain't gonna see him no more. He's no longer with us.
The audacity of that, right? So we need to understand that these wars, right? These wars that these psychological wars, they are fought against us from every angle, including in the movies. The audacity of having a white man being the king of the jungle. Let that sink in for a second. And the only thing they do till this day is they come and they destroy the jungle. They're talking about right now, they're trying to take the Maasai lands from them, talking about the Maasais that they're bringing in conservationists. They're bringing in prize hunters who are going to be killing lions. And they're talking about the fact that the Maasai are destroying the wildlife and the environment. And the Maasai are saying to them, we have lived with these animals for millennia. What are you talking about? What do you mean we are destroying the environment? Y'all come here and you shoot them. In black culture, and this is in global black culture, not just in Africa, but of course it starts in Africa. We do not take more than we need. We do not kill animals for fun. We kill an animal. We are moderate and conservative about how much of the meat we consume, and we don't kill another animal until it is necessary, until it is absolutely necessary to ensure protein.
Say it again. Say it again. And tell them why we must say it again.
We do not take more than we need. And it is important for us to repeat that. We do not kill, and this starts from the most rudimentary level. We do not kill an animal that we do not need to kill. We only kill animals for food. We do not, no more, no less, right?
But then these European hunters come to Africa. They find, and I would imagine, just like here in the U.S., you got some good black people, and then you got some black people who want to stand on the corner, sell heroin, cocaine, and they're terrorists to the black community. I don't care how much money they make. You're a damn terrorist. You're selling poison to your own people. So similarly, everywhere else in the world, black, white, purple, green, whatever, Europe, Asia, you got good and bad. So you got some bad people in Africa who will do anything for $1, including taking some white poachers to go kill some animals that he know he's wrong for doing. Help me out.
Absolutely. There's no place on earth where you're not going to find greed and greedy people. But in particular, we have been primed by this capitalist system, this system of more, of taking and hoarding, right? Which goes back to what I was talking about. We don't take more than we need. Historically, culturally, our social structures were made such that we only use out of the environment. We only took the gold that we needed to make bracelets. We only took the diamonds that we needed. We took no more. We do not have this culture of taking gold out of the earth to go bury it in treasuries. We leave it where it is needed. And similarly, we do not have this culture of needing to own and hoard all of this. But the capitalist system creates that. And so you have to prime the people with this capitalist hunger system, because that's what it is. It is an insatiable system that can never be satisfied, no matter how much you feed to it. And so once you have inculcated that in the culture, you are going to find people who have fallen for this capitalist madness. And so, yes, it becomes very easy to find one who will sell their people, out. But make no mistake about it, and this needs to be said, both in Africa as well as the guys on the corner you're talking about, it is still a small minority, and that context is required, because to have the mainstream media tell it, you would believe that that is the majority of Africans, you would believe that that is the majority of Black people on the corner. First of all, it is not. It is a small minority. It is a small portion of the population. Even with the extremely high numbers of incarceration in the United States, where they say 1 in 4 Black men has had some kind of interaction with the law, either arrest or incarceration, that's still 1 in 4. That's still only 25%. It still means 75%. Sure, 25% is a huge number, an unbearably huge number. It shouldn't be that high, but it is still only 25%. And so we don't spend enough time focusing on the 75%, and we need to. So that needs to be said. That needs to be remembered. And so, yes, of course, they will find that one Black person who will take them there, but we cannot exonerate the colonizer for their actions. And so that's where my focus always remains. Yes, there is that small minority that will facilitate, but the colonizer will find a way to do their dirt, right? And when they couldn't find the African, they came with their guns blazing and did it themselves anyway. And they will do that, and they will continue to do that. Right now, this is a very topical discussion that we are having, because right now, BlackRock is trying to get their claws on the Kenyan economy. That's why the protests are happening in Kenya right now, because the people are fed up of paying taxes to repay IMF loans. This so-called finance bill,
International Monetary Fund, the global welfare pimp.
The welfare pimp, whose primary job is to ensure the continued dominance. Remember where my story began. The continued dominance of the US dollar and the European euro over the whole entire globe.
And to keep Kenya paying for, it's almost like a student loan. You're going to be paying it for the rest of your life.
And remember, because they say that African countries are bad credit risks, right?
Yeah, after they dangled this fruit in front of you, hey, you want this, and you, yeah, I want it. And they, okay, well, you got it, but you're also going to be paying us. And not only that, your great grandchildren will be paying this debt, just like Haiti.
Through the nose. And by the way, just like payday loans, right here in the United States, right here in Baltimore, right here in America, right?
Yes.
So
they payday loans, yes.
So the tools of oppression that they use on Black people, it does not matter where we are. It does not matter if I live in New York, a mile away from Wall Street, where all the money is made. It does not matter if I live in Papua New Guinea, in Guinea-Conakry, in Nairobi. The tools that they use against people who look like you and me are always the same. They have a sophisticated machine and machinery, and they supplement those tools with the psychological warfare. So this is why unity for us is not optional. It is not a thing that is suggested or a nice to have. It is absolutely crucial for our survival. It is absolutely elementary for us to be able to beat this system that would have us dead, that would destroy us, that will ensure that our babies are killed before they're born. And when they actually get born, that they do not get milk, they do not get formula, they do not get mother's milk. And if they happen to get that and actually still grow up, that they do not have a father in the house. And that by the time they are graduating high school, rather than having the government spend money to send them to school, the government is spending money to incarcerate us. And so this is what the system is set up. And so what we need to remember is that when that happens to be the trajectory of a Black person, whether it is in Africa or in the United States, that is what the system has set up. So the fact that we don't all end up there, that is the magic of Black people. That is our magic. The fact that there are all these traps laid for us, and yet, they've only managed to entrap 25% of the Black people in the United States in that system that they have set up for all of us.
And any industry that we penetrate, we dominate. Any.
Needless to say, they wouldn't let Black people on the basketball courts. When they did, it was over, right? They wouldn't let Black people on the football field. They wouldn't let Black men in this century. They would not let Black men be quarterbacks, right? And look, all the Black quarterbacks now, look what is happening. So this conversation is only beginning, my brother.
Africa, unite.
Africa, unite, yeah. Because we're moving right out of Babylon. And we're moving to our father's land. And so I tell you, BlackRock is in Kenya. And so it is no accident that just as William Ruto comes to the United States and gets fitted at the White House with the most elaborate state visit, with even, I've never seen a U.S. president do the Guard of Honor. Have you seen that before?
Guard of Order.
The Guard of Order, the military Guard of Order, where they walked up and down the line of military on the South Lawn. I've never seen that before. Maybe it happens at other state dinners, and maybe I just haven't covered it. But that was the first time I've seen.
I'm glad you said this, and we're going to go a few minutes over. Would you rather have Biden or Trump?
I don't care. I don't care for either.
You got to choose.
I got to choose. Trump is going to be a nightmare. Biden is already Biden is a nightmare. Trump would be a total absolute nightmare. Biden is a nightmare. As far as I'm concerned, the foreign policy is the same. Now, Trump, of course, is going to go hard and make sure to destroy the whole of Gaza. He doesn't care about, I mean, neither of them care, but Trump doesn't try to mask, right? Trump just goes,
What about domestically? This notion of Project 2025, this neo-conservatism, this fascism, this elimination of government agencies, this dictator mentality, the destruction of a republic, of a democracy, more towards this far right way of running America, which benefits primarily the whites who are dwindling in numbers.
Well, so of course,
especially the far right thinking.
It is dangerous. So let me not mince my words. That would be dangerous. Trump is dangerous. Trump is a fascist.
Domestically and internationally.
And internationally, yes, they are terrorists. They are, white supremacist terrorists. So they are a danger. Biden is a white supremacist, maybe not a terrorist. And so I guess if you're asking who I'm more afraid of, I'm a little bit more afraid of Trump, sure. I can't say that I'm in love with Biden. I can't say that I'm in love with Biden's policies. I do not like, I cannot believe that he has presided over a genocide in Palestine visibly. I mean, not that I cannot believe he can do it, because clearly they have shown us who they are. What I cannot believe is that despite the visuals every day on our TVs, he doesn't give a ish. And what that tells me is that the same Biden that Kamala Harris pointed to that opposed busing in the 70s is the same Biden that we have in the Oval Office. He doesn't give a ish about black or brown people. Definitely not. And he will do what he can get away with. He's doing what he can get away with. I still will never forget the whipping of Haitians at the border. So there is no love lost. There is no love lost from my end for Biden. I'm less afraid. I'm more afraid. Put it this way. Definitely, I'm afraid of the fascism. But, you know, I don't have a rousing endorsement for Biden.
The Haitians at the border, was that under Biden or Trump?
It was under Biden. It was in the first year of the Biden administration. Biden continued to extend Title 42, which was an executive order that was signed by Trump that used the pretext of COVID to say that they would not allow asylum applications because of COVID, because asylees would be bringing in COVID. Biden continued to extend Title 42 for a while. And eventually, he did go to challenge it in court when he was trying to overturn it. And the courts, I think, had blocked it. And so he comes off as if he was trying to overturn Title 42, but he was not always trying to overturn Title 42. He continued to extend it for a while. It was only when I think in 2023 or late 2022 or 2023, when he decided that, you know, he had done enough with Title 42, that when he tried to reverse it, the courts tried to stop him and he went to court to fight it. But he did extend it.
Any final thoughts on this first round of the Gacucu Glover Hour?
I cannot believe how much we've covered already.
We just lighting the fire.
We just lighted the fire as I sit here watching the fires burning in Nairobi, Kenya, with the protests against the International Monetary Fund bill, which was written, by the way, there were white American lawmakers in the parliament in Nairobi in Kenya when they were debating this bill. Please tell me what they were doing in parliament, in the Kenyan parliament, overseeing the overseer, right? They're looking down to make sure that his bidding is done. Please explain to me what that was about.
It's about that Skrilla.
Okay, I guess you don't need to explain more than that, right?
Yeah, that Skrilla.
So we know exactly who this bill is for. It's not for Kenyans. And I'm glad that Kenyans are out. Unfortunately, the protests did get hijacked today. There was violence. They did try to storm the parliament. And I personally believe that is because the protesters made the mistake of allowing politicians into their ranks, the opposition politicians, who of course are going to hijack, right, for their own ends. And they try to storm parliament, and unfortunately there were some fatalities because you don't storm government, legislatures. Unfortunately, so that's the news that is coming out of Nairobi, which is very sad to learn. That was not the turn I was expecting, because these protests really started out peacefully, and they were very genuinely, and I believe will continue to be genuinely peaceful, anti-austerity protests, because you cannot tax the living daylights out of people's livelihoods and expect them to just sit back. And these taxes are regressive taxes that are ensured to protect big business, to protect American companies. American companies pay no taxes in Kenya. Uber, Amazon, all of that, Google, Facebook, they pay zero in taxes in Kenya. These are the people that should be paying the taxes. We should be having a progressive tax system that would ensure that people pay taxes according to how much the economy, how much the Kenyan economy is giving back to them. Uber gets everything out of the Kenyan economy and pays nothing. That should not be the case. But the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, insists they are the spokesman for Uber.
Yeah, devil. They are devils.
They pretend that they are this.
They are devils.
Party, but there they are, being the spokesman for.
They
Uber
might as well have a hood
Facebook.
on, a KKK hood on. That's what they should have on.
Yeah, just out and come out with it.
Yes. Mr. Gacucu, we got to get on, do some more preparation for tomorrow's big event. We will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Coppin State College of Business. You are one of our honorees. It is truly our pleasure, even though things, the start was not what we thought it would be.
It was what it was. It was bumpy. I am right where I need to be. The BriefScoop is where it's at. You know, discussing
want you
international.
To be a regular on this network. I don't know how we're gonna work that out, but we need to see and have these discussions, and we need to bring more people to this discussion.
Absolutely, sir. Good
deal. So what's our exit greeting?
Well, Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.
Kwaheri. Heri njema, meaning until next time. Kwaheri.
Kwaheri.
It's essentially really the directly translated it is Kwaheri is to God.
To God. Kwaheri.
Yes.
Good morning, world.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure's all mine, brother.